Welcome back to the Present Path, the place where forgotten thoughts resurface and time no longer runs straight. Tonight, we begin again, or perhaps we return. Have you ever felt like you've been here before? Not just déjà vu, something deeper. The way the sunlight hit your face one morning, a dream that mapped this exact conversation. A street you walked down for the first time, and somehow already mourned. This isn't coincidence, says one theory. It's eternal return, the unsettling idea that you are reliving this life, exactly as it was, is, and always will be. Every breath, every failure, every love, repeating, forever. But what does that mean for choice, regret, or hope? What does that mean for you? Get comfortable. Breathe slower. You're about to step outside time and back into it. Welcome to the moment you've lived before. You're brushing your teeth, standing at the sink, and suddenly you stop. There's a pause, a flicker, the taste, the sound, the angle of the light through the curtain. You've done this before. Not yesterday, not last week. Something deeper, something timeless. This is the theory of eternal recurrence. Not just reincarnation, not a fresh start. No. This theory claims something colder, heavier, and more exacting. You are living this exact life again, exactly this way. Same mornings, same mistakes, same people, same last thoughts. You've heard this idea before too. Maybe in a dream, maybe in a philosophy class, maybe in a past version of this very moment. But each time it finds you again, it feels like a realization you already had and forgot, a loop disguised as a revelation. The theory doesn't stand ask for belief. It doesn't stand offer comfort. It simply stares you in the eye and whispers, what if this isn't set the first time? Friedrich Nietzsche was the one who made it most famous. He imagined a demon confronting you with this idea in the loneliest moment of your life. It leans close and says, this life, as you now live it and have lived it, you will live once more and innumerable times more. No changes, no edits, not even a pause button. And here sits the real question. Would you curse that demon or embrace it? We tend to think of time as a road, a river, something that moves forward. But what if it's a wheel, a cosmic DVD on loop, the same scene, again and again? You, right now, hearing these words, you've heard them before. Science doesn't confirm the theory, but it doesn't fully rule it out either. Some cosmologists propose a universe that collapses and restarts infinitely. Some quantum theories suggest that time may be more circular than linear, and some thinkers propose that in an infinite universe, every possible configuration of atoms must repeat eventually. Even you. The ancient Stoics believed in this too. The Hindus called it the cycle of yugas. The Buddhists named it samsara. The Mayans mapped it in stone. Different cultures, same chilling implication. You return, over and over. And here sits where it cuts deeper. If you've lived this life before, then you've already made every mistake. But also, you as Fee have already survived them. You never's ever ready apologized to the one you hurt. You as have already laughed so hard you cried. You've already stood at the edge of something terrible and kept going. You've already done this. And now you're doing it again. This isn't a second chance. This is a perfect repetition. The same thoughts, the same fears, the same joys. Your freedom lies not in changing the outcome, but in realizing the pattern. You may wonder, what's the point then? The point is this. If everything repeats, so does your ability to meet it differently, even if the actions stay the same. Like an actor playing the same role, Your delivery might change. Your breath might be steadier. You might understand the script more deeply, even if the lines are identical. Your awareness transforms them. That is your one strange freedom. If you are stuck in the loop, then kindness, presence, and love also repeat. Every moment you choose them, you're choosing them forever. Every act echoes, even this one. So maybe tonight, as you lie down and close your eyes, you'll feel something familiar in the quiet. Maybe you'll smile, not because it's new, but because it's yours. Again, and maybe next time, you so remember, just a second sooner. And that too will repeat. You meet someone, and your first thought isn't, "Who are you?" It's, "Where have I seen you before?" But they don't stat know you, and you don't sut know them. Not in any factual way, not in a way you can name, but something lingers, a pull, a whisper in your blood. This is the strangeness of the loop. The people in your life are not just random collisions, they're recurring characters, and every time the cycle spins back to the beginning, they return to play their parts, sometimes with different weight, sometimes with identical lines, sometimes just brushing your life in passing. In the theory of eternal recurrence, nothing is new, including the faces around you. That friend you can explain your bond with. That person who makes you uneasy for no reason. That brief conversation that left a deep mark. They were all here before. So what does that mean? It means the relationships in your life aren't just meaningful now. They were meaningful last time too, and the time before that, and the next one, even fleeting ones. The stranger who smiled at you when you were at your worst. The person who walked out without explanation. The one you never got to say goodbye to. They've all played this role before. This adds weight, doesn't it? Suddenly, a fight with a loved one isn't just about today. It's part of a pattern that may have repeated countless times. The laughter you share with someone might echo through every loop, unchanged, unbreakable. It's not fate exactly. It's not karma. There's no external scorekeeper. The sense just repetition, pure and perfect. But here's the catch. Just because something repeats doesn't mean it always feels the same. Your awareness changes. Your emotional posture shifts. The same person, the same conversation, the same betrayal, these can feel like new awakenings even if they are ancient echoes. Think of how you reread a favorite book. The words haven't changed. But you have. Maybe that's what these relationships are. Chapters you've read before, but never fully understood. And now, you're reading them again, with the knowledge that the plot won't shift, but your heart might. It makes forgiveness strange. Do you forgive someone for what they did to you this time? Or every time? Do you hold anger, knowing it's already been held, already been recycled? Or maybe, that's exactly why you let go. Not because they changed, but because you did. There's a peace in imagining that your deepest connections are stitched into the fabric of your existence, threaded through every version of your life. It means the people who matter, really matter, and the ones who drift away. They played their role. They always do. But this isn't just about love or grief. That's also about recognition. The idea that someone, somewhere, might be experiencing the same déjà vu when they see you. Because maybe you were important in their last loop too. Maybe your presence shifted something. Maybe it always does. There's a profound loneliness that comes with this theory. Yes, to think that you can never break free. That even your relationships are running on rails you can't derail. But the readers saw something intimate about it. Something almost sacred. What if love doesn't happen once? What if it happens forever? in the same place, at the same time, again and again. What if that goodbye wasn't final? Because you'll meet again, in the exact same spot, and say the exact same words, with the same tears in your eyes. This is not destiny. This is design. A looped script performed on a cosmic stage. And maybe the greatest act of love in that loop isn't said to change anything, but simply to notice it. To say, I see you. I remember you. I don't know how, but I do. And even if they don't say it back. Even if they don't remember, you say it anyway. Because somewhere, deep in the spiral of time, they already did. So the next time you feel that flicker of recognition in a crowded room, the next time someone's since laugh feels like a memory, the next time you lock eyes and feel the universe contract, done, set, doubt it. You have known them before. You will again. And you do, right now. There's a certain kind of regret that doesn't age. It doesn't soften with time. It doesn't fade with distraction. It waits in the corners, quiet, sharp, familiar. And then, without warning, it returns. Not as a new wound, but as something strangely rehearsed. You feel it rise in your chest, and deep down, a voice whispers, not this again. This is repeated regret. The idea that if your life is looping, then so are your mistakes. You didn't just say the wrong thing once. You said it 1,000 times. You didn't just walk away that one night. You walked away in every version of this life. That missed opportunity. That silence when you should have spoken. That choice made out of fear instead of love. Each one returns. It's not a new punishment. It's a reflection, a perfectly preserved echo of who you were in that moment. And if you've lived this life before, then you've carried that moment with you each time. It doesn't vanish when you die. It begins again with you. But here's the twist. It still hurts. Even if you felt it before. Even if it sets part of the pattern, it still surprises you with its sharpness, as if you've never touched it before. Why? Because memory isn't what carries the loop. Emotion does. The same grief, the same shame, the same what if, all returning to their marks like seasoned actors on a stage they've walked countless times. So what can you do? Can you change it? The theory says no. Every regret will happen again, in the same place, with the same words, the same ending. But that doesn't make you powerless. It makes you aware. And awareness, even in a closed loop, is something sacred. You may not stop the mistake, but you can feel it differently. You can lean into the honesty of the pain. You can recognize it not as failure, but as a pattern that reveals something true about you. Regret is often painted as a failure of judgment, but in a looping life, it becomes a mirror of your character. You regret things because they mattered, and the fact that they hurt every time proves that. So maybe you don't escape the loop by fixing the past. Maybe you escape, just for a moment, by forgiving yourself inside it. Imagine that. Imagine the version of you that's lived this regret before. The one that lay awake at night, playing the scene over. The one that never told them how much they mattered. The one that never called back. You as above them, you are them. But you are also the one who sees it now, who feels the pattern, who sits in the repetition, not with despair, but with empathy. This is the strange grace of repeated regret. It teaches you that guilt is not permanent. It returns, yes, but so does understanding. So does the chance to hold yourself differently the next time you fall. You will fall. You always have. But maybe in this version, you fall with softness. You fall with awareness. And that awareness becomes your rebellion. Because the loop doesn't reward perfection. It rewards presence. You can change what you said. But you can notice the echo. You can change what you missed. But you can feel it fully, without turning away. The loop gives you every moment again, even the worst ones. And somehow, that is its gift. Because the more you return, the more you understand what it means to return with gentleness. And if you meet your regret with gentleness, you still see it for what it is, a scar that doesn't close, but also doesn't kill you. You've carried this before. You got carrying it now, and you will carry it again. So don't rush to fix it. Sit with it. Feel how ancient it is. Feel how human. That too repeats, and that too matters. There is a phrase that feels almost insulting the first time you hear it. Nothing ever changes. You resist it. You want to believe in progress, in randomness, in chance encounters, and unrepeatable decisions. But if eternal recurrence is real, if this theory holds, then everything changes only to return exactly as it was. This is the burden and strange beauty of perfect repetition. In this model, your life is not a journey. It's not even a circle. It's an identical orbit, repeating forever, without deviation. Each tick of your clock, each rise of your breath, every eyelash that falls from your cheek, falls again in the same direction, under the same moonlight, in the same night. At first, this idea feels like a prison. What could be more suffocating than a life that can never deviate, never improve, never shift? But look deeper. Repetition doesn't always mean failure. Sometimes it means eternity. Consider a melody. The same notes, played again and again, and yet it soothes you. Not because it changes, but because it doesn't set. Consider ritual. Lighting a candle at the same hour, saying the same words before bed, kissing a loved one goodbye in the doorway, even though you did yesterday and will again tomorrow. Is that not sacred? Perfect repetition becomes unbearable only when we stop paying attention, when we assume that something needs to be different in order to be meaningful. But maybe meaning comes from noticing what's already there. Let's go further. Imagine that each version of your life is playing out across infinite dimensions, but not like branches on a tree, more like copies in a hall of mirrors. Each one indistinguishable, and you are the same in all of them. Every time. Same hopes, same failures, same tiny joys, same deep losses. Now imagine that every version of you thinks they're the first, that this life is the only one. And yet, each of you stares up at the same sky and feels the same ache in your chest when you wonder why. This theory doesn't argue against meaning. It asks you to find it in the repetition itself. Like brushing your child's hair each morning. Like stirring the same soup on the same stove. Like rereading a sentence you already know by heart. You might be tempted to scream, but I want something new. But maybe newness is an illusion. Maybe everything you need has already been given. And your job now is to witness it completely. If this moment repeats forever, then your act of noticing it makes it holy. That breath you just took, it will happen again. That blink, that sigh, that one thought that drifted through your head just now. All of it, already destined. There's a strange kind of power in that. Not the power to alter, but the power to revere. In a world of perfect repetition, attention becomes a form of worship. When nothing can change, the only thing left to change is your intimacy with it. Imagine drinking the same glass of water. in every version of your life forever. You can gulp it down distractedly, or you can taste it. Notice its temperature. Feel the way it moves down your throat. Understand that this moment is not just fleeting, it's eternal, because it will always be this moment, and never any other. So many of us seek escape from the loop. We dream of different lives, alternate paths, impossible resets. But maybe the loop is incest your enemy. Maybe it's sense the only thing keeping you centered. Maybe repetition isn't a flaw in the design, it is the design. And your resistance to it is just another step you repeat. You as very ease asked these questions before. You will ask them again. But tonight, just for a moment, maybe you stop fighting. Maybe you look around and say, if I must return to this moment forever, then let me love it fully. That too repeats. And that too is enough. There is a peculiar kind of silence that doesn't come from the absence of noise. It comes from being completely inside a moment. Time feels suspended. The ticking stops. Your breath aligns with the room. And for a split second, it feels like the entire universe is holding its breath with you. This is the infinite moment, the strange intersection where time, repetition, and consciousness fold into one another, where you become aware, not just of now, but of how many times you've stood inside this very second. In the theory of eternal recurrence, the infinite isn't measured by years or miles or galaxies. It's measured by return. By the way, this exact configuration of thoughts, light, sound, and skin has come around before and will again. You are not just experiencing a moment. You are standing in a threshold of eternity. Right now. Always. This theory doesn't require belief in gods or souls. It doesn't ask for prayers or punishments. It only asks you to imagine that this moment is the only one that exists, and that it will echo forever. The conversation you stare having, the song playing in the background, the position of your fingers, the curve of your spine as you sit. These are not details. They are coordinates. The loop is precise, and everything is exactly as it must be, again and again. But what makes a moment infinite? Not its duration, not its size, but the weight of awareness placed inside it. When you suddenly become aware that you are here, fully, when your attention sharpens, your distractions fall away, and your breath slows, that's the moment that feels eternal. Not because it will last forever in memory, but because, in this theory, it will last forever in repetition. Every loop brings you back to this very second. Again, and again, and again. And what will you do with it? Most people sleepwalk through the present. They don't mean to. They just forget how fragile and immense a moment really is. But once you begin to feel the loop, you stop rushing forward. You stop wishing time away. You realize this isn't a step towards something else. This is the something else. There is nowhere to go. You've already been there. You still be there again. This is the strange invitation of the infinite moment. Not to escape, but to arrive. To look around. To listen fully. To feel the temperature of the air against your skin as if it's the first time, because maybe in a way it always is. We don't often think of awareness as a superpower, but in the eternal return it is. It's the only form of movement you're allowed inside a fixed loop. Everything else will repeat. But how deeply you feel it, that's yours. That's where the soul, if there is one, begins to stir. Think of the greatest moments in your life. Not the milestones, not the loud ones, but the quiet instants. Your hand brushing theirs, barely touching. The flicker of rain against a window as you stared without thinking. The sudden feeling that you are here. Now imagine that you don't just get that once. You get it forever. Every loop, every life, every return. Not a burden, a gift. This is the doorway the theory opens. Not just a loop of suffering, but a loop of presence. You are offered this breath again, this sky, this silence, this sorrow, and maybe that's enough. Maybe infinity doesn't need to be big. Maybe it only needs to be intimate. Right now, you are living a moment that has been lived before, and you whisper about to forget that. The loop will close. The feeling will slip. But for now, hold it. Feel the infinite. Let it settle into your bones like something ancient and kind. And when it fades, don't worry. It will return. Because you always do. Sometimes you remember something that didn't happen. A moment too vivid. A detail too sharp. A feeling too heavy to be imagined. It catches you off guard. A place you've never been, but recognize. A sentence you've never heard, but know the ending to. A face that feels like the after image of a dream. This is what some call a memory echo. In the theory of eternal recurrence, these echoes are not errors. They are fragments, splinters of a previous loop bleeding through into this one. Not full memories, not past lives in a romantic sense. Just traces, glitches, moments that slipped through the cracks. You're not supposed to remember. That's part of the loop's design. Because if you remembered everything, you wouldn't take it seriously. You wouldn't weep at heartbreak. You wouldn't fear loss. You wouldn't hope. You would just wait. And awareness without stakes becomes numbness. But sometimes, something leaks through. And it sets not just déjà vu. It sets emotional déjà vu. A memory not stored in your brain, but in your bones. You walk into a room and feel a sorrow that doesn't belong to now. You hear a laugh that stirs something ancient in your chest. You feel nostalgia for something you've never had. And in those moments, if you start paying attention, you don't just ask, have I been here before? You begin to whisper, am I here again? That difference matters. Because recurrence isn't just about repetition. It's about recognition. And when you begin to recognize the pattern, not as thought but as feeling, you begin to understand that your memory may be deeper than you were told. Not memory as fact, but memory as resonance. The way certain things feel inevitable. The way certain words hurt more than they should. The way you keep making the same decision even when you know it hurts you. What if those aren't habits? What if they sear echoes? What if some part of you remembers exactly what happened last time? This theory challenges how we think about learning. Because in a normal life, memory leads to growth. But in a looping life where memory is hidden, intuition takes its place. You don't just remember touching the fire, but you flinch from the heat. You don't remember the heartbreak, but you feel the warning signs. You don't remember the goodbye, but your heart prepares for it long before it arrives. That's the ghost of experience, the residue of past repetitions, the echo of something your mind cannot hold, but your soul cannot forget. And here's the strange part. Some of those echoes are beautiful. You feel peace in places you never visited. You feel safe with someone you just met. You feel home in a sound, a color, a movement, like something you're returning to. That's not fiction. That's pattern recognition from a life you've already lived. So what should you do with these echoes? You don't chase them. You don't try to trap them. You listen. They are not here to be solved. They are here to remind you this life is not unfamiliar. You sword walked these days before. You spread breathed this hour. You've stood at this edge, felt this weight, and looked for the same answer. And maybe you shall forget again. In fact, you will. But for now, as the echo lingers, try this. Don't did explain it away. Don't set, rush to define it. Let it exist. Let it hum quietly in the background of your day. Because one day, maybe not this loop, maybe not the next, you will catch the full echo. You shall remember more. And it won't set, scare you. It will feel like coming home. And when it does, you'll realize that memory isn't what lives in the past. It's what follows you through every version of now. You've probably felt it before, that uncanny sense that things are unfolding exactly as they were meant to. The job you didn't plan for. The person you met by accident. The event that seemed random but turned out to define everything. We call it destiny. A word that offers comfort when chaos feels too big to name. But in the theory of eternal recurrence, destiny is not a divine plan. It's not a path laid out for your growth or purpose. It's not even a story. It's a loop. And the feeling of fate isn't the universe guiding you. It's the echo of something you've already done. This theory whispers something strange. You don't feel drawn to a person because you're meant to meet them. You feel it because you already have. Not in a previous life. Not in a different body. But in this exact life. Last time the loop played out. And it will happen again. The same meeting. The same choice. The same mistake. So is destiny real? Maybe not in the way you think. Because in a perfectly repeating world, nothing happens for you. It just happens. And your belief in meaning is part of the pattern. Your hope. Your heartbreak. Your feeling that something was meant to be. Those two are scheduled events. That doesn't make them less beautiful. Think of a film you've watched 10 times. You know what's going to happen, yet it still moves you. You still cry at the same moment. You still root for the same character, not because you believe it's spontaneous, but because you're inside the feeling, not outside it. That's how destiny works, in the loop. It sets, not about direction. It simp's about immersion. You were always going to take that road. You were always going to say yes, then regret it. You were always going to fall in love with the one person who would leave, and you always will. The idea of destiny in this model is not oppressive. It's honest. It tells you this moment isn't set new, but your experience of it still matters. You might ask, if everything is determined, what's the point of anything? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the question is, if everything is repeating, what do I notice this time that I didn't before? You may not change the events, but you can change your relationship to them. You can cry with more presence. You can laugh with more softness. You can love with more gentleness, knowing that even if it ends, it will also begin again. Destiny in this loop becomes a mirror of your own willingness to surrender, not to passivity, but to intimacy with your life. You're not here to win. You're not here to achieve. You're here to witness. And sometimes, witnessing means recognizing that what you're calling meant to be is simply what already was, looping back to meet you again. This also means your so-called missed chances were never missed. You are always going to miss them. That door that didn't set open, it never has. That apology that didn't come, it never will. And yet, within that, you find peace. Because nothing has been lost, only repeated. This is the illusion of destiny, that something is unfolding for your transformation. But maybe, just maybe, what's unfolding is your recognition that you've been here before. And still, you feel. Still, you care. Still, you hope. And that is something remarkable. Because hope, in a deterministic world, is the greatest act of rebellion. So keep believing, if you must, that this is all leading somewhere. But no, there is nowhere else to go. You've already arrived. And you will, again. Exactly this way. You stand at the crossroads. Again, two paths, two outcomes, two futures. Or so you think. You feel the weight of decision pressing against your chest. You analyze. You hesitate. You hope this time, this version, you'll choose better, wiser, different. But what if you've already chosen? What if you always choose this? Every time the loop resets, every time the story returns to this point, your decision, the one that feels so urgent, so alive, is the same one you've always made. This is the paradox of the unchanging choice. In the theory of eternal recurrence, your choices are not fresh snow. They are footprints you step into, again and again, believing you're the first to leave them. But you turn not. You stir the echo. And this moment, the very moment you're in right now, has already happened. You've stood here. You was worried. You've doubted. You've chosen. Every version of you. Across every loop, made the same call. Took the same risk. Said the same goodbye. Stayed when you should have left. Or left when you should have stayed. So what does that mean? Are you powerless? Not quite. You still feel the weight of choice. You still experience the agony of uncertainty. You still search for signs, pray for clarity, ask for time. The loop doesn't erase the drama. It only fixes the outcome. But within that fixity, something extraordinary happens. Your consciousness becomes the canvas. Your awareness becomes the rebellion. Because even if your actions must repeat, your depth of perception doesn't have to. You can begin to notice your choices as rituals, not strategies. You can stop judging your past and start studying it. You can ask, not did I choose correctly, but what does this pattern reveal about me? And the answers may not change your path, but they might change how you walk it. Unchanging choice isn't about fate. It's about familiarity. You keep making the same choice because it reflects something fundamental in you, your fears, your desires, your grief, your hope. And those don't evaporate just because you want them to. They loop with you. They are part of the recurrence. So maybe the question is not, can I choose differently? But rather, can I sit with the choice I always make and finally understand why I make it? Imagine a play you've seen many times. The lead character always takes the same tragic step, but the more you watch, the more you catch. The subtle hesitation in their breath, the quiet tremble in their hand, the look in their eye that wasn't visible the first time. That's what happens in life too. Each time you return to your own choice, you see more, you feel more, you soften, and slowly the act of choosing becomes less about altering the future and more about witnessing the self. This loop offers no promises. It doesn't reward or punish, but it gives you something else, a mirror. You cannot just choosing, you peer revealing yourself. And maybe that's all life ever was, a stage set to reflect your own soul back at you. You still get to live your choices in full color. You still get to weep when they hurt. You still get to celebrate when they bloom. But underneath it all, you begin to see the pattern. You begin to recognize the silence beneath the sound. And in that silence, you find freedom, not of action, but of attention. So next time you stand at the fork in your life, then the sin ask, what should I do? Ask, what am I about to reveal? Because you already know what you will choose. You always have. But this time, you so watch yourself make it. And in that watching, you thoroughly wake up. Again, there's a strange sensation that comes not when something is new, but when it feels too familiar. You turn a corner and your heart races, because it feels like you already know what's around it. You meet someone for the first time, and something inside you quietly says, again. This is the emotional footprint of the time loop, the haunting center of eternal recurrence, not a sci-fi invention, not a metaphor, but a possibility that your entire life is already scheduled to happen, and has already happened. Infinite times. You may picture a loop as something clean, a neat circle, but this one isn't symmetrical. It's invisible, and you can't step outside it to observe. You can only feel the edges of its presence, in the patterns, in the rhythms, in the questions you ask when you're alone. What if you seared not remembering a past life? What if you're just remembering this one, from last time? This theory doesn't require divine punishment or reward. There's no judge in the sky, no scoreboard tallying your wins. Instead, it offers something far stranger, complete neutrality. The universe, according to this loop, doesn't care what you do. It simply presses play. Again and again. What's more disorienting is this: free will still seems to exist. You still make choices. You still pause, still wrestle with doubt, still hesitate before saying the wrong thing. But in this model, your choices are illusions that must repeat. The coin flips. You think you're deciding heads or tails, but it always lands the same way, because it always has. And yet, you feel it. The weight of decision, the fear of change, the craving for something different. That seps the tension of the loop. You are conscious within it, but you cannot escape it. Still, there's power in knowing, power in noticing the beat before it drops, in watching a moment unfold and thinking, haven't I felt this exact breath before? You have, and you will, again and again. So what do you do with that? One reaction is despair. The idea that nothing can change, can crush the spirit. Why try? Why struggle? Why speak at all if the words are already pre-written? But another response is quieter, stranger. Acceptance. Not the passive kind that shrugs, but the active kind that awakens. The loop isn't your prison, it's your canvas. And the truth is, the more you become aware of it, the more sacred the moment becomes. Like a melody heard for the 100th time, but now you understand its structure, its notes, its imperfections. If this is the only moment you still ever get, and also the infinite moment you always return to, then is it worth treating as holy? Think about the simple things, the way steam curls from your tea, the breath of someone sleeping next to you, the ache in your knees as you rise. Each of these is small. Each of these is eternal. Each will come back. The loop doesn't take meaning away, it multiplies it, because repetition reveals value. When something is done once, it may be random, but when something returns again and again, it becomes ritual. In this way, your life isn't set just a story. It sets a ritual you are re-performing every time. So sit still, watch closely. This part, this very second, was in the last loop too. Feel the air in your lungs. You have breathed it before. And somewhere, Impossibly, you're breathing it again. The time loop is not a punishment. It's sense, a mirror. And now you're starting to see your reflection inside it. Pain has a way of returning before it ever truly leaves. You try to bury it in distraction, wrap it in logic, silence it with time. But it waits, sometimes for days, sometimes for lifetimes. And when it comes back, it doesn't still knock. It slides in on the breath of a memory, on the smell of a hallway, on the curve of a word someone says, without knowing they've just reopened something. This is the paradox of recurring pain. In the theory of eternal recurrence, your suffering is not a one-time burden. It saps a permanent fixture in the loop. You don't just experience heartbreak once. You return to it, over and over. The same betrayal, the same loss, the same helplessness you thought you'd moved beyond. And each time, it breaks you in the exact same way. Same tears, same scream you never voice, same sleepless night. At first, this feels unbearable. If healing is impossible, if time doesn't actually move forward, then what hope is there for relief? But look closer. The theory doesn't say that your experience of pain stays the same. Only the event repeats. And that's where something strange, almost sacred, begins to emerge. You begin to notice the contours of your pain, not just as suffering, but as a language you are slowly learning to read. The grief that gutted you the first time, now it hums, still deep, still sharp, but also familiar. The loneliness that once consumed you, now it whispers, and you know how to sit beside it, without flinching. Even if the loop forces the pain to return, you are the one who changes your relationship to it. That is the secret. You don't escape recurring pain, but you evolve inside it. Think of a song that once made you sob. The same melody now stirs something gentler. The ache is still there, but softened by memory, by distance, by growth that defies repetition. Pain becomes a terrain you've mapped, and though the landscape doesn't change, your ability to walk through it does. The loop, in this way, becomes not a cage, but a classroom. Each return offers the same test. Will you turn away from pain, or will you meet it with new eyes? There is dignity in the repetition, not because it sets fair, not because it sets easy, but because it proves you can endure again. That courage isn't set, just a moment. It spots a pattern, one you have traced many times before. And here's the deeper twist. If your pain recurs, so does your healing. Every time you pick yourself up, every time you extend compassion to yourself in the middle of the storm, every time you sit in the quiet and let the sorrow pass through without resistance, that too becomes part of the loop. You are not only doomed to hurt, you are destined to survive. Maybe this is the hidden beauty in recurring pain. It reminds you that nothing you've suffered was ever meaningless. If it comes again, it means you made it through last time. You don't get to skip the hard parts, but you do get to recognize them, to greet them like old ghosts, and say, yes, I remember you, come in. I shall sit with you this time, because you sat with it before, and strangely you will again. This is not resignation, this is presence. This is the quiet triumph of knowing that even if the pain returns, it no longer owns you. And if that seems true, if you can begin to meet sorrow as something familiar rather than something foreign, then the loop hasn't defeated you. It's revealed you, the part of you that breaks and still shows up, the part of you that falls and still breathes again and again. Growth is supposed to be forward motion. We climb, we learn, we improve. That's the story we're sold. One of linear progress, where the self becomes more enlightened, more refined, more free with every passing year. But what if that SEP's an illusion? What if your growth is happening inside a closed circle? Welcome to the paradox of static growth, where you evolve but never escape, where you awaken but still repeat, where you become wiser inside a script that never changes. In the theory of eternal recurrence, you are not progressing toward a final state. You are revolving through the exact same moments, lifetime after lifetime. The job you hate, the person you forgive, the anxiety you carry in the pit of your stomach each morning. All of it, again and again. So how do you grow when the path always curves back to the beginning? The answer is uncomfortable. You don't grow out of your life. You grow within it. Imagine being trapped in the same story, but every loop you gain more understanding of your role. The words stay the same, but your delivery changes. The events stay fixed, but your silence becomes more deliberate. Your smile more authentic. Your surrender more full. That SIP's not stagnation. That SIP's a deepening. Static growth means that you may never change your outer reality. You may always fear failure. You may always struggle with the same longing. You may always take the same breath when your heart breaks. But inside those repetitions, you start to notice things. The shape of your fear. The origin of your longing. The truth underneath your reaction. Each time the cycle returns, your perception sharpens. You begin to see your patterns not as flaws but as fingerprints, unchanged yet more readable with each pass. You stop asking, "When will I be free of this?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" again. Because even if your outer life cannot evolve, your inner clarity can. That's what Nietzsche meant when he said to live your life in such a way that you would welcome its return exactly as it is. It's sense, not about fixing your life. Incept's about inhabiting it fully. So much of our desire to grow is actually an attempt to escape discomfort. We want to outgrow our sorrow, outgrow our loneliness, outgrow our fear of death. But what if true growth is the opposite? What if it's the ability to stand inside those feelings over and over without flinching? That's SIMS, not forward movement. That's SEP's, rooting deeper into your own humanity. In a looping life, your choices don't accumulate. They repeat. But your insight doesn't vanish. It expands. Quietly, invisibly, like tree rings, hidden beneath the bark. So yes, you might still make the same mistake, but maybe this time, you notice the moment it begins. You feel the shift in your chest. You hear yourself choosing the wrong thing, and you hold that truth tenderly. That is growth. Not correction, but compassion. Even if nothing changes on the outside, you begin to respond differently on the inside. And over time, that changes everything. This paradox, static growth, teaches you to stop measuring your life in milestones. Start measuring it in presence. Not did I get promoted, but did I show up honestly in my discomfort? Not did I overcome my fear, but did I sit with it without shame? Not did I win, but did I remain awake even when I was losing? This is the quiet revolution of a looping life. To return and return again, and still choose awareness. Because the loop may never end, but you can meet it with deeper breath, softer hands, and wider eyes. That is enough. That is everything. You think the future is unwritten. A blank canvas. A horizon that stretches beyond your vision, waiting to be shaped by your choices. It feels full of potential, possibility, surprise. But what if the future isn't set new? What if it's set something you have already lived? This is the paradox of the familiar future. The unsettling possibility that everything ahead of you is something behind you too. That you are not moving forward, but arriving again. Not in a poetic sense, in a literal one. That person you haven't met yet. You remember, seen I've already known them. That mistake you still make next week, already made. That decision you some wrestle with next year, already chosen. You as Burr walking into a room you have already left, forgetting that your fingerprints are still on the doorknob. This is what eternal recurrence demands of your timeline. Not progression, but recursion. Your dreams for tomorrow, they cyber echoes. Your fears, they send my memories wearing masks. And the most disorienting part isn't set that the future is fixed. It's sense that it feels so new each time. You still get nervous. You still get excited. You still wonder what happens next, even though deep down something inside you already knows. That knowing is hard to name. It sets not a prophecy, not psychic foresight. It seems more like standing at the edge of a memory you haven't remembered yet. A flash of recognition that disappears the moment you try to hold it. The future isn't set coming toward you. You spur circling back to it. And yet, the lipples wonder in that. Because it means every moment still feels fresh. Even when it sets ancient. It means you can still laugh. Even when you know the joke. You can still fall in love. Even when the script hasn't changed. You can still be surprised by a world that's already unfolded. The familiar future doesn't rob you of joy. It reframes it. You session not here to control what's coming. You stare here to remember how to feel it. And maybe that's enough. Because if every step you're about to take has already been taken, then your only real task is to take it with presence. Not because it changes the path, but because it reveals the depth of your experience walking it. This theory also invites a softer relationship with your fears. You worry about what might happen. But what if it already has? What if the loss, the failure, the heartbreak, what if they're already in your history, not your future? Would that change the way you carry dread? Would it help you breathe? It sets not that pain disappears. It sets that you survived it, maybe more times than you know. The future is not your enemy. It sets your reflection. And like all reflections, it repeats what's already there. So how do you live with that? You stop trying to rewrite the future. You start trying to read it differently. Not what will happen to me, but how will I meet what's already coming? With fear, with openness, with reverence. You may not choose the ending, but you choose how deeply you live in the middle. And that middle is where everything happens. Not once, but always. The familiar future is not a limitation. It sets an invitation to return to your life like it's both prophecy and memory. To walk into the next chapter with the strange confidence of déjà vu. You've been here before. You will be here again. But today, not you sat here now. So take the step, not to change the story, but to feel it fully, as if it were brand new, even if it never was. You wake up, brush your teeth, drink your coffee, step out into the same hallway, the same light, the same unremarkable rhythm of an unremarkable day. And yet, thoth, something heavy about it, something ancient, like you've been performing these rituals for far longer than you can remember. This is the paradox of timeless routine. where ordinary acts become sacred echoes, played out again and again in the loop of your life. Not just daily habit, but cosmic repetition. In the theory of eternal recurrence, these routines are not dull. They are eternal gestures, lived and relived across countless versions of this exact life. The way you stir your tea, the way you glance at the clock and sigh, the way you sit in silence just a moment longer than necessary before beginning the next task. They are not moments to get through. They are moments you return to. And again, and again. You may not notice it most days. You call it monotony. You wish for change. But buried within the repetition is something profound, a portal into stillness. Because if you're going to do the same thing forever, maybe, just maybe, it's worth paying attention. Watch yourself. The way your fingers curl around the same spoon. The way you pause before opening your front door. The way you blink when you realize the afternoon is already fading. These aren't set wasted seconds. The center coordinates in a recurring life. And when you begin to notice them, they begin to shift, not in form, but in weight. Brushing your teeth isn't just hygiene, it's an act of eternal return. Making your bed isn't just tidiness, it's a gesture you've made in every loop before. Stretching your legs at noon, sighing into your palms, turning on the same lamp at dusk. These are not chores, they are liturgies. Sacred, because they repeat. In a world where time is a circle, routine becomes the spine of your story. You don't stay, escape it. You learn to live within it. And in doing so, something unexpected happens. Your sense of self begins to soften. You stop chasing novelty. You stop demanding transformation. You begin to ask a gentler question. What does it mean to do the same thing with more presence? The first time you light a candle, it's just fire. The 100th time, it's memory. The 1000th, it's ceremony. This is how rituals are born. Not from variety, but from repetition infused with awareness. The loop teaches you that it's not about what you do. It's about how you do it. Drink your coffee like it sips the first time. Not because it is, but because it isn't set. Because you held this cup in this hand before. And you still hold it again. So make it sacred. This theory doesn't strip life of meaning. It demands that you make meaning where you stand. And you stand, most days, in the middle of repetition. What if that sip's not failure? What if that sip's the whole point? Your growth doesn't come from breaking the routine. It comes from entering it more deeply. Let the rhythm lull you into presence. Let the sameness open a doorway into stillness. Let your daily gestures become a kind of wordless prayer. Even boredom begins to shimmer when you see it this way. You sit not stuck. You returning. Again, and again, and again. This isn't set a life to escape. It's a life to re-enter, fully, consciously, lovingly. So tomorrow morning, when you wake and do it all again, do not rehearse the loop. Honor it. You has done this before. You will do it again. So do it well. Do it slowly. Do it like it matters. Because in this theory, everything you do, he who does. There are moments when you feel it, not as a theory, not as an idea, but as a quiet truth that slips between thoughts. You are not going somewhere. You are coming back. This is the core of the entire concept, the ancient center of the spiral, the weightless realization behind every déjà vu, every cycle, every echo, eternal return. It sounds poetic, even mystical, but it is in fact devastatingly literal. You are not just reborn. You are not just recycled. You are repeating, without deviation, without escape, forever. The life you are living now, this one, with its exact struggles, its mundane routines, its small joys and vast disappointments, you have lived it before. Every word, every breath, every pause between them, and you will live it again. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, precisely. Nietzsche called it the greatest weight, the unbearable idea that this moment is not fleeting, but eternal, not because it lasts forever, but because it returns infinitely. Imagine a wheel, not one you turn, but one you are tied to. The more you struggle, the more it spins. The more you surrender, the more you begin to see its shape. In this view, nothing is wasted, because nothing is ever lost. It only returns. The sorrow you feel now is Sep's ancient. The love you feel now, also ancient. And both are waiting for you again, somewhere at the far end of the circle. So how do you live inside a life you cannot escape? Some might say, you done set. Some collapse under the weight. If everything is predetermined, what sips the point? But that sips the wrong question. Because eternal return doesn't set rob life of meaning. It amplifies it. Worse, if you are to live this moment forever, then how you live it now matters more than anything. The sip of tea, this second of silence, this glance across the room. If it comes again and again and again, then it becomes sacred. You are not merely passing through your life. You are etching yourself into it. Again and again and again. But here steps what makes it beautiful. You can remember the past versions, and yet you feel them. You feel when a choice is heavy. You feel when a pattern is old. You feel when something inside you whispers, this part matters. Be present here. That whisper is not magic. It sims memory, a kind of intuitive residue from the countless times you've arrived at this exact place. You have stood in this room before. You have wept in this silence before. You've held this fear in your stomach like a stone, and you will again. That sips not failure. That sips design. Because in every loop, you don't just suffer. You awaken. More slowly than you more subtly than you notice. But it sits there. You stop clenching. You soften. You begin to meet life, not as a problem to solve, but as a recitation to honor. The same story, the same lines, but spoken with new breath. And maybe that sets the true point of eternal return. Not to test you, not to punish you, but to teach you how to love a moment you've lived before. Because if you can love it here, in this exact configuration, then you can love it forever. So the next time you find yourself thinking, haven't Sandy been here before? Let the answer be yes. Let it comfort you. Let it anchor you. You are not lost. You are home. Circling back to yourself, again. There is a kind of goodbye that never ends. The kind you whisper long after the door has closed. The kind that sits on your chest like a stone. Years after you have moved on. The nut dot come with closure. It doesn't come with clarity. It comes with return. This is the paradox of the repeating goodbye, where farewells don't mark endings, but the start of another cycle. You think you have let go. You think time has carried the pain away, but then you hear a voice, or smell a scent, or pass a familiar street corner, and it sends all back. The memory, the ache, the moment you said goodbye and didn't mean it. In the theory of eternal recurrence, there is no final farewell, because every parting, no matter how deep, returns. That final phone call, that last hug, that silence that stretched too long. You relive them all, again and again. In this life, in this loop, the person you lost, you lose them again. The goodbye you never said, you never say it again. And yet, you feel it every time. Fresh, raw, immediate. Why? Because the heart doesn't set remember in words. That remembers in pattern. Every time the loop resets, your body remembers the ache of parting. Even if your mind has no name for it. Even if you think you seem healed. This is the cruelty of recurrence. But also, its strange tenderness. Because with every repeating goodbye, comes a repeating chance to feel it more fully. Not to change the ending. Not to rewrite what was lost. But to witness it. Completely. Honestly. Gently. You don't instead avoid the pain. You make room for it. The goodbye becomes a ritual. A sacred wound. One you see have carried before. And will carry again. But this time, maybe, you hold it differently. You don't rush to numb it. You don't fill it with noise. You sit with the echo. You let the ache settle. He never settle. And you realize something important. The fact that this hurts, again, means you loved again. Even in the loop. Even knowing the ending. That is not foolishness. That is grace. To open your heart to a goodbye you know is coming. Every time is the greatest act of presence. And maybe that accepts all the loop ever wanted from you. Not perfection. Not detachment. But presence. So feel it. Feel the way your voice trembled when you said goodbye. Feel the words you never said and still carry. Feel the space they once filled in your life. A space that still remembers them, even now. And when that pain comes back next time, and it will, you all know what it is. You once spat panic. You felt breathe. You seen say, ah. You seen you again. And in that moment, your soul becomes something softer. Not weaker. Just more awake. Because in this strange reality, where nothing is ever truly gone, learning how to say goodbye, without resistance, is how you learn to live. So don't fight the farewell. Zest curse the return. You once stood at this train station before. You've watched this door close. You've whispered this same aching phrase in the dark. And yet, you are still here. Still loving. Still breaking. Still returning. So say it one more time. Say it with your whole heart. Even if no one hears. Even if it changes nothing. Because in the end, what matters is not whether the goodbye lasts. What matters is that you showed up for it. There are things you know, clearly, confidently, without hesitation. And then there are things you don't know, questions that haunt you, mysteries that won't let go. But sometimes, there's something else. A strange in-between feeling. Something you don't know, but somehow recognize. This is the paradox of the known unknown. A moment, an image, a sound. It stirs something in you that has no name. You can place it. You can explain it. But you feel it like a whisper under the skin. And I've seen this before. In a world of eternal recurrence, this sensation isn't coincidence. This still is not imagination. In sentence memory bleeding through the loop. You don't remember with clarity. You remember with familiarity. That old house you dreamt of as a child. You stood in its doorway. The smell of a dish you have never eaten. You have tasted it before. That deep fear you have carried since birth. It's since not new. You have feared it before. You'd have survived it before. The known unknown is a shadow of previous knowledge. Knowledge you've forgotten, but your soul has not. And that shadow follows you, not to scare you, but to remind you there is more beneath this surface life. You might call it intuition, a hunch, a gut feeling that defies reason. But in the theory of eternal return, these are not glimpses of the future. They are echoes of already traveled ground. You feel uneasy around a stranger. You feel at peace in a city you have never visited. You sense the right answer before you understand the question. These are not accidents. They are coordinates on the loop, signposts you has already passed, that you stare now passing again. This isn't stain about fate. The zesp is about recognition. The known unknown doesn't give you certainty. It gives you something deeper. Trust. Trust that your knowing doesn't always need proof. Trust that your confusion isn't always a problem to solve. Trust that your deepest questions may not have answers, only reminders. Not everything has to be understood. Some things are meant to be felt, and when you stop trying to force clarity, when you stop demanding explanations for every flicker of déjà vu, you begin to soften into the mystery. You begin to let the unknown stand beside you as something ancient, not alien. That fear you can set name. Sit with it. You have sat with it before. That dream that keeps repeating, Essendio trying to teach you something. That sets, trying to remind you, you has been here before. Even if you don't know why. Even if you never will. And that's okay. Because the known unknown doesn't need solving. It needs honoring. It's what makes you turn off the lights and pause at the doorway, you not knowing why. It's what makes you cry at a song you've never heard. It's what makes you feel ancient and newborn at the same time. These are not accidents. These are reminders. You are not moving forward. You are remembering in circles. So embrace the questions that instead leave you. Stop trying to dissect the silence. Let the unknown stand in the room with you as something holy, not because it holds answers, but because it holds you. You have carried these mysteries before. You will carry them again. And each time, you shall know them a little more deeply, without ever needing to explain them. That is what makes the loop bearable. That is what makes the mystery beautiful. There comes a moment, not loud, not dramatic, when you pause in the middle of an ordinary day and feel something shift. A strange awareness washes over you. Not fear, not joy. Something quieter. Recognition. You stir not remembering a dream. You remembering the loop. This is loop awareness. The eerie feeling that you are not living your life for the first time. That somewhere deep in your bones, you've already experienced this second, this gesture, this breath, and yet you're experiencing it all over again, as if it's new. This awareness doesn't last long. It's like trying to catch smoke. It fades the moment you look directly at it. But while it lingers, everything feels fragile, sacred. Your senses sharpen. The light on the wall becomes poetic. The silence in the room feels full. Time slows, not because the clock stops, but because you stop chasing it. And then, just like that, it's gone. Back to the ordinary rhythm. Back to forgetting. Why does it vanish? Because we're not designed to hold on to the infinite. We are built to forget in order to survive. If we remembered every loop, every repetition, we would lose the illusion of meaning. The drama of life would flatten. The urgency of choice would vanish. But loop awareness isn't about knowing everything. It's about noticing something. The flicker of continuity behind the curtain. The quiet gasp behind the laughter. You don't need to believe the theory. You only need to observe how often you feel like you've returned. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, but truly. There's a chair in your house that feels older than the house. A jacket that feels like it remembers you. A song that feels like it's playing just for you even though you've heard it 100 times. These are not clues. They simper echoes. Traces of previous versions, shadows from last time. And the more you let yourself feel them, the more you start to shift. You become softer, less reactive. You stop needing every moment to prove itself, because you already know it will return. This awareness doesn't make life boring. It makes it profound. You understand that every tear you cry now was also cried before and will be again. But each time it means something slightly different. Because your perspective, though it loops, is still alive. You begin to treat pain differently. You begin to treat joy differently. You stop gripping so tightly. You let things happen, not because you've given up, but because you've remembered that this moment already unfolded once, and you survived it. Loop awareness isn't set about control. It's seps about intimacy with time. You stop rushing. You look people in the eye. You taste your food slower. You notice the sound of your own footsteps in the hall. Because you've walked that hall before. Maybe not in another life. Maybe not in a parallel world, but in this one, before the restart. This theory doesn't promise answers. It doesn't give you a goal or a lesson. It gives you a mirror. And sometimes it lets you see through the mirror into the hallway behind it. And in that hallway, everything you've ever done is playing on repeat. But the more you watch, the more it becomes beautiful, not terrifying. The mistake you made once isn't set just a failure. It seems part of the loop. It teaches you something now that it didn't teach last time. That awkward hug. That one-sided love. That apology you never gave. They've all happened before. But maybe this time, your awareness changes the gravity. Not the outcome, the meaning. The steps what awareness does. It sanctifies the ordinary. When you remember the loop, even briefly, your entire life becomes holy. Not because it's special, but because it repeats. Over and over and over. So the next time you pause mid-sentence and feel like you've already spoken those words, the next time the sun hits your face just right, and your heart skips for no reason, the next time a silence feels like a déjà vu, done sat, ignore it. You stare waking up inside the loop. And even if you forget again, even if you fall back into the rhythm of forgetting, you toll return. Because you always do. Some memories return with sound, laughter, footsteps, the hush of someone's voice. But others, they come back with silence. A pause you can explain. A stillness that wraps around you like an old coat. A moment where the world feels suspended and somehow known. This is the paradox of the remembered silence. Not the absence of noise, but the return of something unspoken, something that echoes without words. In the theory of eternal recurrence, silence is not an empty space. This sends a recurring presence. A room you keep stepping into. A breath you keep holding. And even though you don't consciously recall the last time you stood in that stillness, your body does, your nervous system does. Your heart recognizes the weight of that quiet. Maybe it happens when you stir alone in your room, or when the elevator doors close, or when you wake at 3 a.m. and the world feels paper thin. You feel it. So has it been here before? Not because you remember the event, but because you remember the silence that surrounded it. In a looping life, words change nothing. They are spoken the same way, forgotten the same way. But silence survives. It carries the emotional residue of every version of you. It holds the things you couldn't say, the love you felt but didn't confess, the grief you swallowed, the awe you couldn't explain. Silence is where memory and feeling collapse into one. And in the loop, it's where you meet yourself, already and again. We are taught to fear silence, to fill it, fix it, drown it out. But what if silence is the most honest part of the loop? The only part not altered by language or distorted by time. The only part that remains untouched, untold, but deeply felt. Think of the most powerful moments of your life. Were they loud? Or were they the second after the loudness stopped? The room after the fight? The morning after the loss? The moment after the kiss, when breath is the only sound left? These are the silences that come back to you, not because of what happened, but because of what was left unspoken. And you felt them before. You have stood in doorways, holding your breath. You've watched someone walk away and said nothing. You have stared into the night, feeling the gravity of something that had no name. That silence returns, over and over, in different shapes, with the same weight. It sits not there to hurt you. It sits there to show you who you are, when there's nothing left to perform, because silence in the loop is the closest thing to truth. It doesn't deceive. It doesn't forget. It simply waits. It simply waits. And when you finally stop running from it, you hear something deeper. Your own stillness, your own presence, your own remembering. In that remembered silence, you aren't lost. You aren't broken. You are here, exactly where you always been. You stood in this quiet before. You shall stand in it again. And each time, it will invite you to listen, not to the world, but to yourself. So the next time you feel that strange quiet settle over you, the kind that doesn't ask for anything, not a stiff rush to escape it, let it rise. Let it surround you. Let it remind you that silence isn't empty. It echo. And you've heard it before. Regret has a strange memory. It doesn't keep track of dates or details. You adjust feelings. Just wait. And the heaviest regrets are rarely about what you did. They sear about what you didn't do, what you left unsaid, what you watched fall away in silence. Now imagine that regret, returning, over and over, never changing, only repeating. This is the paradox of looping regret. In the theory of eternal recurrence, your regrets are not isolated moments. They are built into the structure of your life, stitched into the pattern that repeats, loop after loop. You don't regret something once. You regret it forever. That one time you stayed quiet. That one decision you made too late. That one person you let go. They come back, not to punish you, but to revisit you. And every time, they feel like the first time. Because even though your body has lived this life before, your memory has not. You stare caught in the same emotional storm. Forgetting you has ever already been drenched by it. It can feel cruel, unforgiving, like a wound that never closes. But there's something quietly profound about it too. If your regrets loop, so does your opportunity to feel them differently. Not to fix them, not to prevent them, but to understand them. To watch yourself hesitate again, and this time notice the fear behind it. To hear yourself apologize too late, and this time feel the softness in your voice. To relive a goodbye, and this time truly honor what you lost. Regret becomes a mirror, reflecting who you are in the moments that define you most. Not the successes, not the celebrations, but the silences, the stumbles, the choices that haunt, and the loop ensures you return to them every time. But with each return, you see more clearly, you hurt more honestly, you hold the sorrow with more tenderness. Looping regret doesn't demand that you become perfect, it only asks that you become aware. You begin to realize that regret isn't set the enemy, it's sense, evidence, proof that something mattered, proof that your heart was engaged, proof that you were awake, even in your failure. And if you still doomed to feel it again, then let it be your teacher. Let it slow you down. Let it soften your ego. Let it sharpen your attention to what matters now. Because even if the moment must repeat, your awareness of it can deepen. That sips your hidden freedom. In this loop, you cannot undo what you did. You cannot rewrite the scene. You cannot save what was always meant to be lost. But you can feel it fully. You can stand in the center of your regret and not look away. You can let the ache rise without rushing to justify it. And in doing so, you break something, not the loop, but the illusion that regret is your enemy. The sea is wanted God. The simp's your companion, your shadow, your echo. It follows you not to torment you, but to keep you close to your own truth. The truth that you wanted to be better, that you tried, that you cared, and that caring, no matter how many times it ends in pain, is what makes the loop worth living. So the next time you feel regret creeping in, well, shove it down. Don't sit numb it. Den stad, run. Sit with it. Hold it. Let it speak. And listen. Because you have heard it before, and you will hear it again. But maybe this time, you too understand it just a little more. You don't remember your birth. You instead remember your death. And if this life truly loops, if every second is destined to repeat, you one day will remember this version either. But that doesn't mean you haven't been here before. And it doesn't mean you want that come back. This is the paradox of the forgotten return. The quiet truth that your life may not be linear, but recursive. That you start not going forward, but turning inward. That your steps don't carve a new path. They follow a circle. You can see. You have already returned. You just can remember it. Not because the memory is lost, but because it was never meant to be kept. That SEP's part of the loop SEP's design. Forget, so that you may feel again. Forget, so that you may believe it SEP's new. Forget, so that meaning remains possible. Because if you remembered everything, what would move you? What would make you weep? What would make you care? The pain, the love, the confusion, they only matter because they feel fresh. The illusion of firstness is what gives your life texture. But behind the illusion is something older. Something that recognizes itself in quiet ways. You don't remember the last time you stood in this room. But something about the way the light hits the floor feels familiar. This you don't remember saying these words before. But they sit in your mouth like old prayers. This forgotten return shows up in your instincts. In the way you flinch before the mistake. in the way you soften before the goodbye. It sets, not that you know, in sense that you remember knowing. That seps the strange mercy of the loop. The dome set carry the weight of memory, but you carry its shadow, and that shadow is what guides you. Not like a map, not like a prophecy, but like a faint pulse under the skin, a whisper that says, yes, this again. Be gentle, because even if you can't remember your last return, you can still honor it. You can live this life with reverence, as if it's a sacred text you've forgotten how to read, but still know is worth reciting. You can meet each sunrise not as a gift, but as a repetition, one you have received before and will again. And you can meet each sorrow the same way, because in this loop, you're not just returning to joy, you're returning to grief, to failure, to longing, and none of it is wasted. None of it is meaningless. Even if you forget, even if every version of you forgets, that saps the beautiful cruelty of existence. You are living a story you still already lived, and you don't must get to skip the hard parts, even if you've endured them 1,000 times before. But you get to choose how present you are to them, and presence, in this theory, is the only true act of freedom. Because presence is the one thing that doesn't require memory, that only requires awareness. So live this life like you have lived it before, because you have. Live it like it matters, because it does. Even if you forget, even if you've always forgotten, even if the forgetting is part of the return, you are not here to escape. You are here to remember how to begin again, and again, and again, with no memory, only feeling, only presence, only this breath, which you have taken before, and will take again. So breathe it in, like it's the last breath of a life you love, and the first breath of one you have forgotten. Because it is both. You stir, caught off guard. Your heart races. The words someone says, the way the sky opens up, the sudden shift in your plans, you didn't see it coming. And yet, something in you did. This is the paradox of the predictable surprise, the moment that feels both spontaneous and strangely rehearsed. It accepts the realization that what shocks you now may be something you have already lived and forgotten. In the theory of eternal recurrence, every surprise is a repetition. That unexpected message, that random encounter, that decision that flipped your world upside down. You think it came out of nowhere. But what if it came from a previous version of this very life? You were surprised then too, just as wide-eyed, just as breathless, and you will be again. The loop doesn't erase wonder, it enshrines it. Because even if the event is predictable in the cosmic sense, even if it's fated, fixed, inevitable, your experience of it remains alive. You feel it again, as if for the first time. Because to you it is. The beauty of this paradox is that it preserves emotion, even when logic might say it should fade. You know, deep down, that the universe isn't random, that your life moves in patterns, that every choice follows familiar trails, and still, you are startled. Still, you cry. Still, you laugh uncontrollably. When something unfolds perfectly, without warning, the loop doesn't steal joy. That simply wraps it in déjà vu. Think about the moments that have changed you. Didn't set. They all arrive like accidents. Didn't stint. They all appear uninvited. But look closer. Were there signs? Was there a quiet pull before you met that person? Was there a hesitation before you made that move? Was there a dream, a nudge, a whisper before the surprise showed its face? Maybe the surprises weren't sent so surprising. Maybe you've been here before, and maybe some part of you was waiting for this exact moment. The predictable surprise teaches you something profound. You are not here to control the story. You are here to be moved by it. Even if you have lived it already. Even if the ending is the same. Surprise is how the loop reintroduces the sacred. Accepts how it keeps you soft. It's how it reminds you that you are not above wonder. Even if you have wandered these halls before. In a looping life, you still get to be amazed. You still get to feel the thrill of not knowing what sips next. Even though, on some buried level, you do. It sets a dance between memory and forgetting. Between fate and feeling. Between the script and the actor who sips allowed to cry at the lines, even if they said them before. And that sep's not false emotion. That sep's reverent performance. So when something catches you off guard, there won't first rush to explain it. Don't try to decide if it was coincidence or destiny. Just feel it. Feel the collision. Feel the heat of the moment. Let it be both familiar and new. Because that's what this life is. A cycle of awakenings, each one delivered like a surprise gift. You have already unwrapped, and still gasp at every time. There is no contradiction in that. Only poetry. You don't need a new ending. You just need a new relationship. To the middle. So open your hands. Open your chest. Let the next surprise knock the air out of your lungs. And smile as it does. Because this too has happened before. And it will happen again. Exactly this way. And just as beautifully. Not every memory is a thought. Some live in your chest. Some arrive without story, just a sensation. A wave that rises without name or warning. You feel something, and you don't know why. A longing, a sadness, a joy that has no cause. This is the paradox of the echoed feeling. An emotion that does not belong to now, but still pulses through your veins like it's brand new. In the theory of eternal recurrence, your feelings return as faithfully as your actions. You love again. You grieve again. You hesitate again. Not because you stir broken, but because you have been here before. Your life is a loop, but so is your heart. The emotions you feel are not just yours in the present. The somber echoes of what you have felt before. In this room, with this person, under this exact sky. You may not recognize the moment, but your body does. Your breath shifts. Your stomach tightens. Your pulse stutters with familiarity. You have loved this way before. You have feared this way before. You have sat in this quiet confusion and asked the same question. Why do I feel this so deeply, so suddenly, so much? And the answer may be, because you have felt it before. Exactly this way. This isn't set random. It sets rhythm. Your emotional landscape doesn't reset when the loop begins again. It returns, like the tide. And some feelings are so strong, so ancient, they carry through every version of you. Even if you forget the name, you remember the weight. That sense of being watched in a mirror-lit hallway. That warmth, when someone looks at you without expectation. That ache when a door closes behind you and everything feels a little too quiet. These are not one-time feelings. They are recurring truths. They loop because they matter. Because they shaped you. Because, somewhere inside the machinery of time, they still are. And there's sets of beauty in that. Because if pain returns, so does peace. If grief echoes, so does tenderness. If fear resurfaces, so does courage. Your emotional world is not linear. It spirals, and each pass through it deepens your capacity to understand it. You cry again, but now with context. You love again, but now with softness. You lose again, but now with grace. That is the quiet power of echoed feeling. You begin to feel familiar with your own depths, not less moved, just less afraid. You don't need to rationalize it. You don't need to trace it back to a specific moment. Some feelings are older than your memory, older than your body. They are impressions in the loop, resonances that ring through time and find you again and again. So what do you do when they arrive? You don't have to rush to label them. You let them bloom. You hold them like an old friend who has no name, but whose presence feels like home. Because that's what they are. Pieces of a self you have been and will be again. This is not mysticism. This dense intimacy with time. There is passion, emotional déjà vu. Not imagined, not explained, but real. And the more you allow these echoes to speak, without judging them, without editing them, the more you begin to recognize their patterns. You become fluent in your own return. And suddenly, you are no longer drowning in feeling. You are hearing it. You are learning its shape. You for tracing its echo back through the spiral of your existence and whispering to yourself, ah, yes, this again. But this time, you feel it with reverence. So let it come. The feeling you can set name. The ache you can set place. The swell of something that feels like memory, but lives in your chest. Let it come. It sets, not weakness. It sends, not confusion. In sensu, returning, you change. You grow. You forget who you were and become someone new. That seems what life is supposed to be, isn't it? A constant evolution. A story of becoming. But what if that story is looping? What if you are not becoming someone new, but endlessly returning to the same version of yourself? This is the paradox of the recurring self. In the theory of eternal recurrence, you are not moving forward through transformation. You are repeating your own identity. Every gesture, every reaction, every way you carry your sorrow and joy, it's all been done by you countless times. The person you are now, you has been them before. Every insecurity, every kindness, every secret. You have not grown out of anything. You simply return to yourself. Again. That ambition you carry, you have carried it before. That flaw you are ashamed of, you worn it like a second skin in every loop. That voice inside you that says there sees something more, that Calda said the same thing last time, and the time before that. But here's where it gets strange. You still feel different. You still feel changed. You look back and think, I would never do what I did 5 years ago. But what if you will do it again? What if that transformation isn't set linear, but cyclical? Your regrets don't vanish. Your breakthroughs don't accumulate. They simply return. In time, in feeling, in rhythm. You loop back to yourself like a song that plays slightly differently each time, but is built on the same notes. That sep's not a trap. That sep's your essence. And maybe that sep's the hardest truth to accept, that there is no ultimate version of you, no final draft, no perfected self waiting at the end of some journey. There is only this you, now, as you are, recurring, And within that, a strange kind of freedom. Because if you are destined to be yourself again, you don't have to earn your existence. You don't have to justify your choices. You don't have to become someone better. You can become more aware of who you've always been. And that is the real evolution. The sum's not in changing who you are, but in seeing yourself more clearly every time you return. The fear you feel in conflict, still there. But now, you recognize its shape. The joy you find in solitude, still there. But now, you honor it as something sacred. The love you give, it sets the same. But now, it flows without expectation. That sep's not stagnation. That sep's depth. The recurring self isn't sent about staying stuck. It's about watching your reflection come back into focus, again and again, until one day, you don't have to flinch at what you see. You just say, "There I am again." And you breathe, because in this loop, there is no final test, no summit to reach, just the gentle unfolding of the same soul in infinite directions. You meet yourself again, in laughter, in shame, in longing, in stillness, and you learn to welcome the meeting, even if nothing changes, even if everything returns. So when you feel stuck, ask yourself, what part of me is returning? And instead of running from it, turn toward it. Let it speak. Let it remind you that this self is not unfinished. It is eternal. And if you are destined to loop through this identity forever, then let it be a self you meet with kindness. Every time you think you've woken up, but from a version of yourself, not just from sleep, you feel different, lighter, as if something old has finally fallen away. You call it a breakthrough, a realization, a shift in consciousness. But what if you had this moment before? What if you've already woken up to this exact truth, stood in this same stillness, felt this exact clarity? This is the paradox of the same awakening. In the theory of eternal recurrence, even your awakenings are part of the loop. Even your most sacred moments of clarity, your private revelations in the dark of night, your deepest insights, your spiritual transformations, they too repeat. You stir not arriving at a new place. You stir remembering one you've ever already stood in. The sense of wonder you feel, Yusef felt it. The tears that come when everything finally makes sense, they've fallen before. The sense that something old has ended, that ending has already repeated, and it will again. You are not climbing a mountain. You are cycling through awakenings. Some shallow, some profound, but all of them familiar beneath the surface. You forget them so that you can feel them fully. That sips the strange mercy of the loop, and you feel them so that you can forget them again. That you're always waking up. You are already back inside it, but never staying awake. Because the moment you think you've transcended the cycle, the ego reforms. The patterns re-emerge. The distractions return like weeds in the mind's garden. And once again, you must notice. You must soften. You must remember that you've remembered before. It sounds hopeless at first, the idea that even your greatest awakenings are not final, that there is no permanent transformation, no moment that frees you from recurrence. But look closer. If awakening repeats, so does your clarity. Then so does your capacity for wonder. Again and again. So does the chance to meet your life with open eyes. You don't need to chase a higher self. And that returning, you need to return to the part of you that already sees, that gentle, Infinite remembering is what keeps you human. What matters is how you meet the world when you do. Because what matters isn't how long you stay awake. Do you hold silence without fear? Do you speak with kindness? Do you look at others and see them as pieces of yourself? Then it doesn't matter if the clarity fades. If so, it doesn't matter if you fall asleep again. Because you will wake up, just as you always have. You can be walking, or washing dishes, or watching rain smear across a window, and something will rise in you like a bell. This is it, and that realization, this is life. Though you've had it 1,000 times, the sep's not weakness. Will feel brand new. That's sep's design. The loop is not here to imprison you. It sits here to show you that awakening is not a destination. It's sep's, a rhythm. A breathing in, a breathing out, a forgetting, a remembering. And every time you remember, you come back to yourself more fully. You stop trying to escape. You start trying to arrive. And is this that what all awakening really is? Not an escape hatch, not a ticket out, but a deeper presence inside the thing you've been living all along. So let the insight fade. Let the clarity blur. Let the ego reassemble. Let chase permanence, chase presence. Because if your awakening is meant to return, it will. And when it does, your soul know it, not by its newness, but by the quiet voice in your soul that says, "We've been here before." And you will smile. Not because you've conquered anything, but because you've remembered. Again, you reach the end. A moment of closure. Something finishes. An idea. A relationship. A version of yourself. You breathe out, thinking that sep's it. But just beneath the stillness, a subtle hum. A flicker of momentum you didn't expect. Because the end isn't still. The set's turning. This is the paradox of the final beginning. The quiet truth that every conclusion is also a return. That nothing truly ends in a world that loops. The moment you believe something is over, it begins again. Not metaphorically. Literally. Exactly the same. The story you just finished reading. You read it before. The heartbreak you just survived. You've wept through it before. The death you fear. You've died it, and been reborn into the exact same breath. There is no final chapter. No ultimate resolution. Only the illusion of completion, followed by the repetition of everything you thought you'd left behind. You will rise again in the same bed. Think the same thought. Speak the same first word to the same person. And it will feel like the first time, because the loop erases memory, but not experience. And so the final beginning is both brutal and beautiful. Brutal, because you don't get to escape. Your transformation doesn't last. Your healing resets. Even your last breath is just a pause, before the inhale returns. But beautiful. Because it means you are never truly finished. You don't stop becoming. You don't stop learning, even if the lessons don't stick. You don't stop being, even when you believe the story is done. The final beginning says, you may not remember what comes next, but it will come. It always has. And that is a kind of grace. The worst day of your life ends. And somewhere in the curve of time, it begins again, but so does your chance to survive it again. The best day of your life fades, and somewhere in the circle, it rises again, and so does your chance to notice it this time. This isn't said about hope. This isn't said about despair. It's about continuity. You are not living toward a finish line. You are riding the breath of something eternal that pretends to end only so you'll feel the weight of what came before. Think of all the things you thought you were done with. That version of yourself you swore you'd never become again. That craving you buried. That softness you said goodbye to. They return, not to haunt you, but to remind you you are not a straight line. You are a spiral. Every ending is a checkpoint in your orbit. Every beginning is a place you've already passed through. So when you feel something closing, then in fresh to mourn it. And don't to rush to celebrate it. Just watch. Wait. Breathe. Because it sets already looping back. And when it does, you will still think, strange. This feels familiar. It is. You are. The final beginning is the most honest part of the loop. It says you were done here. But also, you still be back. And if you're going to come back, why not return with reverence? Why not treat this final moment as if it were the first? Because it is. It always was. It always will be. You thought you had finished. You felt the closure settle in your chest like a stone. The final word spoken. The final page turned. The final moment breathed. And then something lingers. An aftertaste. A question that wasn't set supposed to follow you. A whisper. It's sets, not over. This is the paradox of ending again. A loop, disguised as finality. Where the moment you call done is already preparing to begin itself again. In a linear world, endings are milestones. They divide chapters. They mark progress. They offer comfort. But in a circular world, they deceive. The ending of a thought is the beginning of another. The ending of a relationship is the quiet rebirth of the version of you that once loved. The ending of a life is the first breath in the same skin, starting all over again. Eternal recurrence is cruel in this way, not because it denies you closure, but because it forces you to return to it. The door you closed, you open it again. The sentence you finished, you don't speak it again. The goodbye you whispered through tears, you'll whisper it again, in the same tone, with the same ache. But here rippers, where the loop changes something inside you. You stop rushing to finish. You stop living for the conclusion. You start living inside the moment that thinks it sets an ending, but isn't state. You begin to treat endings with gentleness, not urgency. You don't slam the door. You let it drift shut, knowing you still walk back through it, soon enough. This isn't said about being trapped. This sep's about being invited. But you notice that nothing ever really ends. The love you thought was lost still echoes in your breath. The past self you thought had died still visits you in your dreams. The story you thought was finished still vibrates beneath your skin. You are always ending, and you are always beginning, at the same time. And that sense what makes life bearable and unbearable, all at once, because it means your pain won't last forever. But it also means your joy will return only to leave again. It means you will say goodbye, and then find yourself, moments later, the nongs, back at the start, ready to love, ready to lose, ready to end again. In this view, grief becomes a rhythm, not a disruption. And so does wonder. So does silence. So does the sound of your own voice, saying the same word, with slightly different meaning, every time. So don't treat this as your final transformation. Don't wait for the perfect chapter to close. Instead, ask yourself, if I must end again, how gently can I let go this time? And when it comes, and it will, that final breath, that last kiss, that slow turning of the lights, and don't call it the end. Call it what it really is, the return. You spend years searching for it, your reason, your calling, the thing that will give shape to the fog you keep walking through. And one day, maybe, you find it. It clicks into place. You feel aligned. You say, "This is what I was meant to do." But what if you said that before? What if this isn't the first time your purpose felt real? What if your meaning is not discovered, but recycled? This is the paradox of recycled purpose. The idea that your life sips great. Why? Is not an achievement, but a familiar thread woven into every version of you. You didn't find it. You returned to it. You done this before. You have dreamed this dream. You've followed this calling. You've made this mistake in the name of what felt meaningful. You fear he have inspired someone. Once, twice, always. You have let someone down. Once, twice, always. In the theory of eternal recurrence, your purpose isn't set building towards something new. It steps orbiting the same sun. You were not climbing a ladder. You were riding a wheel. But that doesn't mean your purpose is false. It means it stands rooted. It means it survives the loop. And that in itself is remarkable. The questions that haunt you, they are the same questions you asked last time, and the time before that. What am I here for? Who do I help? How do I carry this weight without breaking? You have asked them all, and you still ask them again. But each time, the answers arrive with a new softness, a deeper resonance. Not because the truth has changed, but because you have met it more often. Your purpose isn't some grand shift. It sends a repetition of devotion. The way you keep showing up, the way you keep offering what little light you have to a world you still never fully understand. You think it seems progress, that you stir in becoming someone. But what if you're just becoming more familiar with who you've always been? What if your sense of mission doesn't evolve? It echoes, not because you stir stagnant, but because the loop brings you back to the parts of you that matter most. You are here to serve, and you served before. You are here to speak, and you spoken before. You are here to lose yourself in something bigger than you, and you've dissolved into that flame 1,000 times. Maybe the specific task changes. This time you write. Last time you built. Next time you might listen and never speak at all. But the pulse beneath it, the deep, inner why, is the same. Always the same. So stop chasing the idea that you haven't found it yet. You have. You just keep forgetting it, so you can remember it again. And that remembering, that looped reawakening, is what makes it sacred. You don't have to prove your purpose. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to worry whether you've done enough. You only have to recognize that you're not a story in progress. You are a song in repetition. The melody doesn't change, but your ability to feel it, that deepens every time you return. So if you're first sitting in the quiet right now, wondering if your life means anything, let this be your answer. It has, it does, it will, over and over. Not because you are destined to achieve something new, but because you are destined to love what you already are. That love is your real task. That knowing is your real arrival. So, return to it. Again and again. And since I've been waiting, you spend your whole life becoming someone. Collecting fragments, a name, a role, a story you tell about who you are. You shape yourself around experience. You define yourself through memory. You hold tightly to the idea that this is me. But what if the person you are right now is just a version you have already forgotten? What if your identity isn't in something that lasts, but something that loops and dissolves over and over again? This is the paradox of the vanishing identity. In the theory of eternal recurrence, you come back to the same life, but you don't come back to yourself, not as you remember you. Each loop begins without memory, without personality, without history. You are dropped into the middle of the same movie, but without a script, and you build the same character from scratch every time. You think you are evolving, you think you are changing, but you are simply returning to the same role, played as if it were new. Your name, you've heard it before. Your face in the mirror, you've seen it before. Your flaws, they have reassembled themselves perfectly, and yet it feels original, personal, uniquely you. That saps the illusion the loop protects, that your identity is permanent, that this self is real. But what if your sense of self is just a shape that reappears when the right memories fill in the blank? You are not just repeating your life. You are repeating yourself, word for word, emotion for emotion, without ever noticing that your you is impermanent, not because you disappear, but because your selfhood is fabricated every time. And that realization can feel like a kind of death. If you are not your story, if you are not your memory, if your identity collapses at the edge of each loop, then what are you? A pattern, a presence, a soul, just trying to recognize itself again? Or maybe you are the awareness underneath the roles, the quiet witness who watches each version of you rise, only to fade back into stillness. You are not the voice. You are the space around it. And in that space, there is peace. You no longer have to defend your identity. You no longer have to obsess over growth or legacy. You are not here to become someone new. You are here to become someone true. And that truth, because as to change, because the you cling to is only ever temporary. Every time the loop begins again, you forget everything, and yet you return, which means there is something more stable than personality, more permanent than ego, more enduring than story. You might call it consciousness. You might call it soul. Or maybe it's just presence. The part of you that feels this moment without needing to explain it. That's what lasts. That's what survives the return. Not your name, not your career, not your victories or mistakes. Just the presence that lives quietly underneath them all. So stop trying to carve yourself into stone. Let the identity fade. Let it vanish like mist in morning light. It will return, just as you will. And when it does, you can wear it again. But wear it lightly. Not as a burden, not as a prison, but as a costume you've worn before. One that fits just right, because it's tailored to your forgetting. You are not meant to remember who you are. You are meant to feel who you've always been. That seems not loss. That seps freedom. So when the self begins to fade, the nutsant panic. You soar, not disappearing. You stare, reappearing, in the same place. As always, you wake up believing you can choose. Turn left or right. Say yes or no. Stay silent or speak. Each decision carries the weight of possibility. Each path, a promise of something different. This is what you've been taught, that you are free. But if this life has already been lived exactly this way, then the choice you make is the choice you've already made. Again and again and again. This is the paradox of freedom without change. Because if everything you are doing now has happened before and will happen again, where does freedom go? What does it mean to be free? If every motion is pre-written but forgotten, you feel like you sever deciding. You feel like you sever breaking cycles. But what if the very act of choosing is just another step in the same eternal choreography? You are always going to hesitate. You are always going to take that risk. You are always going to regret it, or celebrate it, or both. And yet, it feels real. Your freedom feels real. Because it is, just not in the way you think. Freedom in a looping life isn't about breaking the cycle. It's about being fully present inside it. You can change the path, but you can walk it with awareness. And that changes everything. You don't have to fight fate. You don't have to rewrite the script. You only have to remember that you are here again, not to change the story, but to feel it more deeply. That you're to be in the pain, knowing you've survived it before. To be in the love, knowing how rare it is, even in an infinite loop. Freedom without change isn't about escaping. It's about engaging. Think of a piece of music. You've heard it before. The melody hasn't changed. But this time, you notice a note you missed. You feel a line in your chest you once ignored. The music didn't change. You did. That is the freedom you carry. Not the freedom to alter the song, but the freedom to listen differently, to show up differently, to hold your own heart more gently. The second, third, 50th time around. And maybe that is a deeper kind of freedom than the freedom to erase the loop altogether. Because it means this life, though fixed, is never wasted. You are not just a puppet. You are a participant. And the loop doesn't trap you. It gives you another chance to do the same thing with more love, more patience, more presence. The choice is not what you do. The choice is how fully you feel it. So stop searching for the exit. There isn't one. There never was. Instead, ask yourself, if I must do this again, how gently can I move through it? How bravely can I love, knowing it ends? How kindly can I speak, knowing the words will echo into the same silence? How open can I remain, even when the loop feels cruel? This is where freedom lives, not in rewrites, but in return. You are not here to change what happens. You are here to wake up to what's happening. Again, and again, and again. Not because you steer stuck, but because you matter enough to revisit. Over and over, until the same breath feels like home. There was a particular magic in a first time. A trembling, a thrill, a sense that something is happening now that has never happened before. The first kiss, the first goodbye, the first moment of realizing you still alive, and that time is real, and that someday it once be. But if this life has been lived already, exactly this way, then your first time is instead of first at all. Is the last first time. Again, he was sand, thom, soth. That moment you felt the world crack open in wonder. It cracked the same way last time, and the time before that, and it will again. So why does it feel so new? Why does your chest still flutter at the edge of a gaze? Why does your voice still catch when you speak a truth out loud for the first time. Because the loop doesn't make things dull, it makes them holy. In this paradox, every first time is both an echo and a beginning. It has happened before, yes, but you haven't remembered it yet. You haven't arrived at it fully, not like this. Not with this exact version of your tired heart and open hands. This is the beauty of a looped life. It gives you back your wonder. Again, and again, and again. You will fall in love, as if for the first time, because it feels like the first. You will weep, as if this sorrow is new, because to you it is. You will marvel at the sky, even if your soul has already counted every star. You don't get fewer firsts in a loop. You get infinite last firsts. And that is not a punishment. It sets a gift. But it comes with a cost. Because eventually, you realize that even this awe, even this miracle, is a memory you have forgotten on purpose. You chose to forget it, so you could feel it again. And that's where the ache lives. In knowing that you are not discovering the world, you are rediscovering it. Which means, this moment, right now, your eyes on this sentence, your thoughts drifting like fog over a familiar lake. This moment has already existed. You say you're not here for revelation. You step here for recognition. That deep, wordless knowing. The sum's ever been here before. But I is glad I didn't remember. Because remembering too soon was ruin the beauty of arriving. The loop has its mercy. It hides things from you. It wraps your life in soft amnesia, so you can be startled by the same sunrise. And so, you treat every first like the last. You touch gently. You speak slowly. You hold people a little longer. Because you know, even if you forget, you still come back here. But not with the same hands. Not with the same hope. Not with the same tiny scar under your left eye. Or the same half-broken laugh. This version of you gets only one shot, this first time. Even if the soul beneath it is eternal, the experience is not. This is your only time, as this version of you, having this feeling, in this exact moment. And that makes it sacred. So don't still rush through it, into Dane's scent waste, the wonder. The nuns assume there is always another chance, to say the thing you said, afraid to say, or look at the world a second longer, before you blink. Because yes, you would so live it again. But you still never live it like this. That's the final paradox. The loop gives you eternity, but the only way to touch it is to treat each moment like it sits the first time you ever have. So breathe it in. Let it crack your voice. Let it break your rhythm. Let it make you feel awkward and exposed and overwhelmed, because that's what being alive really is. You have done this before. Yes, still do it again. But this is yours. Now, always, for the very last, first time. And now, you would up here again. Somehow, at the end, and yet nowhere near done. Because this story, this life, never really ends. It just returns to you. Again, and again, and again. You have walked these halls before, felt these questions burn, felt the same silence settle over your chest. Like a memory you almost remembered. But you chose to listen again. You chose to feel it again. To let the ache in. To let the wonder bloom. And maybe that's the point. Not to escape the loop, but to honor it. To walk it awake. To love what was, and is, and always will be. So if this life has already been lived exactly this way, then let this be your vow, to live it as if it's still worth it, because it is, even if you sep lived it before. Especially if you both lived it before. You are not stuck. You are sacred. This is the present path, and you stir right where you steve always been.